Usually I think I hit like go live, but I don't know that I had to do that today. So here we are
Are we
live,
live?
I
We're
believe.
on them. All right.
Believe I've been led to believe that that is the case. I can just double
I mean,
check
I,
really quick.
I mean, I can look on my phone. It's pretty.
Huzzah. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This is another edition of Steak, Bourbon, and Sports, the show in which we drink bourbon, eat steak, and talk about sports.
Your only source on the internet for two white guys talking about sports.
I've been thinking about that lately. There's just not enough of that
We
anywhere.
need more. So here we are
I mean,
to fill the. We're filling the void.
we are just scraping at the bottom of the barrel here to get any two white random people talking about sports. Um, that's Jeremy Mandel. I am Ari Temkin, and it was recently brought to my attention that sports is happening. Like there's actual sports that's going on right now, and
It's the first time in this iteration of the podcast. We've been
and
doing this for months.
it's crazy because it's crazy for a bunch of reasons. One, because we didn't have live sports for a long time, so it was kind of like you recalibrated yourself to like not have to worry about watching games at night. And so now it's like, oh, I'm not watching games, I'm doing something else. I've just like multiple times it'll be like 8 o'clock at night. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's a basketball game on I can watch right now. Why am I not? I've like just completely forgotten about it. Any of these games. And the other thing is, do you have any idea how what's going on in the NBA right now? Like they're playing games, they're in a bubble. That I get. There's some teams, not all teams. They can't leave.
I understand the basic rules of the situation. It's
Like I get basketball, like that. I'm not confused about.
they try to shoot the ball in the hoop, and if
Right.
you
That
shoot
no,
it from
that I
longer, you
got.
get more points.
How long are they playing this whole game? Like not. When do the playoffs start?
So each team gets eight. I guess they're calling them seeding games. Um, but the hardest part for me is like I cannot throw myself back into a season already scheduled or that's already in progress. Like I don't remember who's good. I don't remember who was fading, who was surging, all that stuff. I don't know if you know about this, but the planet Earth has been through some things since the NBA went off the air.
Like what?
So my uh, it's unseasonably warm for some things since the NBA went off. Hot summer. Planet Earth's been going through that.
That's it. Okay,
That's
so you didn't.
basically the lead story on Planet Earth.
So you didn't answer my question.
I tend to do that. What was the
Do
question?
you, do you have any idea how this works?
Yeah,
So they
I
play
think I get it.
eight games.
So they play 8 games, and then they have the playoffs. If the 8 and 9 seeds are within 3 games of each other, which almost certainly will happen in the West and almost certainly will not happen in the East, then there is a play-in deal. And in the play-in deal, the in the first game, if the 8 seed wins, then they immediately go to the playoffs. The 9 seed has to beat the 8 seed 2 times in a row for them to go to the playoffs.
So it's a best of three only if the 9 seed. Why does this have to be so complicated? Why? And why are they? Why aren't they just playing the 8 games and then whoever finishes with the 8 best records get into the play?
Well,
Call me old
the
fashioned.
reason, well, no, there's a reason for that. I have an answer.
Awesome.
The reason for that is not all of the teams when the NBA stopped, it wasn't like a planned thing. So not all the teams had played an equal number of games. So just by tacking 8 games onto it for everybody, there's still going to be an uneven number of games. Like, for example, I think the Spurs have played 2 less games than the Grizzlies. And the season will end and they just will have played 2 less games. So they tried to add this little wrinkle to levelize that or something, I guess.
I don't think levelize is a word. Sounds
No,
really smart
levelize. No, levelize is a word. I've used it before.
Levelize.
Yeah,
Just because you've used it before doesn't mean it's a word.
that's exactly
I've used the
what
word
it
funner
means.
before because I actually think it should be a word.
Look, here's the thing. I've used the word levelize in front of way smarter people than you and me, and they have not corrected me. That means that it is a word.
LCOE, or levelized cost of energy, is a term which describes the cost of power produced by solar over a period of time. I don't think you thought that.
Boom.
That's levelized cost of energy. That's like a. I don't think levelized by itself is a word.
Levelize it. That's exactly what it means. I'm making it level. I'm taking my energy bill and
Well,
making it the same every month.
I mean,
I'm levelizing it.
I understand it. I understand what the word level means. All right, go ahead. Sorry, they're
I,
levelizing.
I,
They're
I
levelizing
don't
the
I don't know
schedule.
that you do understand it, but in the interest of
In
we have
theory,
actual sports to talk about, I will move
yes.
past this.
Thank you.
Um, so yeah, so to try to make the fact that there will be an uneven number of games played this season, as you can't make it completely levelized and thus completely fair, but this was the NBA's attempt at doing that.
So let me ask you something. So the Spurs, you live in San Antonio. You're a big Spurs fan.
Yes.
The Spurs are. They need to be within 3 games of Memphis, basically, in order to. What if there are multiple teams there? Like, what if there are multiple nine
Whoever
seeds?
doesn't matter. There's not going to be multiple 9 seeds. One of the benefits of having different amounts of games played is they can go completely by win percentage. So actually, the Spurs are at a little bit of a disadvantage because they've played less games. They don't have
Right.
additional wins to add into their win percentage.
So
Now,
if the Spurs finish in playing that play-in game, you were arguing with some of our friends that that would keep their playoff streak alive. The Spurs have been in the playoffs 20 consecutive years.
I think it's 22 now.
22. It would be 22 if they
Maybe,
made it this year.
yeah, this would be the 22nd.
Duncan was drafted in 1997,
Yeah,
so they made it in 98. Yeah, so this would be 22 if they made it, right?
right. So,
But
and just to update where we are, I just pulled up the standings. The Spurs are 1 game back in the loss column of Memphis. Um, the Blazers are 2 games back in the loss column, as well as the Pelicans. Suns and Kings are 3 games back. So basically, all 5 of the teams that are currently not in the 8th seed are within 3 games to force that playing game. And Memphis's second best player now has a torn Jaren Jackson Jr., who is fantastic, by the way. I watched him a couple times. Really good.
yeah, he's really good.
Well,
He's the perfect big man for today's NBA. I don't know why he fell as low in the draft as he did, and he didn't fall low, but he just
didn't he go 2?
is that what it was?
I think he went 2. He fell 1 whole spot. Actually, I'm probably wrong about that, but all 5 of those teams are within the requisite 3 games
Fourth.
to force that.
He was fourth, but he should have been second. Is the thing.
Well,
But I digress. He's really good. Isn't it funny to me? Isn't it funny
now,
to me that
the reason I bring that up though is he tore his meniscus and he's out for the year now. So the Grizzlies, who currently hold the 8th seed, have just lost their second best player or first best, depending on what your opinion of John Morant is, who is also awesome.
yeah. Okay, so 2018 draft. If you could redraft this, and you and I argued this before the draft, so I feel like this is a necessary discussion.
I feel like my argument's going to be mischaracterized here, and I'm going to remember what my argument was.
So the 2018 draft, DeAndre Ayton went 1, Marvin Bagley went 2, Luka Doncic went 3, Jaren Jackson went 4, Trae Young went 5. Would you redraft that? How would you redraft it?
I think Doncic, much as I don't like it, has to go first.
You can make a good case for Trae. Trae Young is every bit as good as Doncic. Different players, but man, Trae Young is good.
Trae Young is good, but are the Dallas Mavericks without Doncic substantially better than the Atlanta Hawks without Young?
I don't know. It's a good question. All right, so our argument, by the way, before this draft was I would take Doncic number 1, and I wouldn't even think twice about it. You, of course, went to Arizona, so you were all about Ayton. You would now, 2 years later, agree with me? Is that what you're saying?
Well, for the record, my argument against yours at the time, which I stand behind, was you've never seen Doncic play a game in your life.
That's
And
true.
at that point,
At
and
that
at
point, I
that
hadn't seen
point,
DeAndre Ayton play a game in my life either.
now that didn't prevent you from having a passionate argument about it, which I suppose is why you do what you do for a living.
Where would Ayton
Um,
go if they redrafted this? Like, I think it'd be Doncic 1, Trae Young 2, and then maybe Ayton or maybe Jaren Jackson. It would not be Marvin Bagley though.
yeah, Bagley wouldn't be in there.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's worth pointing out that Luka wasn't going to Sacramento and made that pretty obvious. So there's a reason they didn't take him. But I find it to be so funny that like Memphis and the Spurs have both quote unquote rebuilt, on the fly here. The Spurs haven't missed the playoffs. They might this year.
Well, in fairness, Memphis has rebuilt.
Right. Memphis has rebuilt. I think they missed the playoffs like once in that rebuild. Right? Once, twice maybe?
I think it was once. That was how they got.
That's how they got
Jackson.
Jared Jackson. So then they drafted.
No,
John
I'm sorry. Twice. They got
'cause
Morant. Too.
Morant and Jaren Jackson. So they're back in the playoff picture. But like Sacramento and Phoenix, like poor
Yeesh.
Sacramento and Phoenix, clinging to their playoff lives here with like Popovich coaching like DeMar DeRozan and I mean who else
Hey.
is on the Spurs?
Well, first of all, settle down.
Rudy Gay. I'm just kidding. He's on
The Spurs. We
Tiago
a lot of
Splitters on the Spurs right now. I think.
He's not. There were a lot of people, myself included, saying the Spurs were one injury to a big man away from forcing Pop into the 21st century and playing with 4 guards.
And
Now,
that's happened.
Well, the Spurs we had said we needed 1 injury. We got 2. Both LaMarcus Aldridge and Trey Lyles are out for the
Wow,
out for
Rudy
the
Gay
remainder of
is
the
still
season.
on the Spurs.
Rudy,
I said that as a joke. I didn't realize he was still on the Spurs.
he had 24 points last night.
Wow. I've watched a lot of Spurs basketball recently. I went from watching the Spurs every game and reading everything about the Spurs to like not watching them or reading anything about them. I'm looking at the roster. This is the first time I've seen their roster in years.
And look what happened. Look what happened to the Spurs without you, Ari.
It's true.
This is not good. This is not good.
Jakob Poeltl.
Pirtle.
Thank you.
And Jakob Pirtle is outstanding, by the way.
He is.
The Spurs are starting both of the guys they got in the Kawhi Leonard trade, and all the Raptors are doing is starting none of the players they got in the Kawhi Leonard trade. So I don't know who. So who won now? But they're starting 4 guards alongside Pirtle. So Pirtle gets to be a rim protector like he can do, and he's actually one of the better rim protectors in the league. He can't do a whole lot other than that, but he's a really good rim protector on defense. And then you've got Derek White, DeJounte Murray, Lonnie Walker, and DeMar DeRozan starting around him. And it's a faster team. They're putting up more points. Their defense is worse, but it was bad anyway. And all of a sudden they're 2-1 and in shouting distance of the playoffs.
So they have to. My contention is they have to get the 8th seed for their playoff streak to continue. You disagree?
This is a matter of semantics.
No, this is important. 21 straight years, going for 22.
No. Here's
Sacramento
the semantics.
Kings haven't made the playoffs since Chris Webber was on their team.
That's not true.
Okay. It seems true, though.
There was one year where Kevin Martin was the leading scorer. I know that because the Spurs eliminated them. Kevin Martin had one really good game that series. I'm full of useless knowledge like that.
And then he went on to play for the Spurs and win a title?
No, he was on the 2013 team. He went to the finals. He went to the finals in that he traveled to the finals. He didn't actually play in the finals. He did get game issued, gear and all that kind of stuff. Maybe he still got a duffel bag or something. But what I'm saying, it's a semantics argument is this a playoff streak or a postseason streak? Because if it's playoffs, then I think you might be right. And they have to make the rounds of the playoffs. If it's postseason, then the play-in game is post the season. So the postseason streak could live and the playoff streak could not live.
What kind of gymnastics are you doing right now to make this work?
I should have gone to law school, Ari. This
This is even you
Judge,
should not be
judgment,
arguing. There's nobody's ever heard of a
judgment in
9 seed.
favor,
Nobody's ever heard of a
judgment in
nine
favor of the
seed.
plaintiff.
No, this is a ridiculous argument that I somehow I was confused about when I got involved in it, and I was siding with Jeremy only until I realized that the nine teams don't make the playoffs in the NBA. It's pretty well known, and it's been this way for a long time. There's 8 seeds
Well,
in the NBA playoffs.
I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but this is a slightly unusual year for a lot of reasons. So I think I feel comfortable saying this year 17 teams will make the playoffs because there's not going to be one in the East.
Do you know who the current coach of the Sacramento Kings is?
Luke Walton.
Yeah, good job. The last time the Sacramento Kings made the playoffs was 2005, 2006.
Leading scorer for that team.
Brad Miller.
No.
He was their top win share.
That's not what I asked.
Okay. Well, that was what I had readily available.
I'm sorry. I have not memorized this 2005 Sacramento Kings win share statistics. I don't even totally understand.
Mike Bibby
totally
was the leading scorer.
Oh, Bibby was on that team. That's right.
And Kevin Martin scored 11 points a game. They also had Meta World Peace on that team.
Who I don't believe he was Meta World Peace at the time.
Well, Pro Basketball Reference calls him Meta World Peace, so I will call him that. I also had Sharif Abdur-Rahim on that team. That was a good team. Corliss Williamson. Vitaly Potapenko. Peja was on that team. Bonzi Wells. That was a good basketball team.
Keep it here for more 2005 Sacramento Kings talk.
There was a point in bringing this up. You want to take a guess at how many coaches they've had since then?
Oh, a lot. Let's say that's 2005. That was 15 years ago. I'll go with a dozen.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
That was close.
That includes interim head coaches. Eric Musselman, Reggie Theus, some guy named Kenny Nat.
Reggie Theus
Kenny
had an
Nat,
NBA job.
Keith Smart, Paul Westfall. Is that his name, Paul Westfall?
Yeah, it's Paul Westfall, the old Suns coach.
Yeah. Of course, George Karl was their coach. Dave Jorger was their coach. Mike Malone was their coach.
Dave Yeager.
Yeager, what I call him, Jorger.
Yeah.
And you might also recall that 1 year in 2014, 2015, they had 3 coaches in the same season. Tyrone Corbin, Mike Malone, and George Karl.
That's really impressive.
That is dangerously impressive. All right. You said you had a question for me on baseball. So I figured we could make a pretty hard turn to talk baseball after figuring out the playoff situation in basketball.
I'm glad that we agree that the Spurs will continue the streak if they make the playoff game.
Certainly do not. We agree on that as much as we agree on DeAndre Ayton as the number 1 overall pick of the 2018 draft.
Well, we actually do it. We actually do agree on that now.
Right.
So I'm glad that you admit that the Spurs would continue the streak. Anyway, my question about baseball, and I say this as someone who doesn't really follow baseball other than when the Houston Astros get in bench clearing brawls, which, by the way, we could do like a whole show on that. That was like that Dodgers thing was the greatest thing ever. And if there was a lot more of that in sports, then I think sports would be even bigger than they are. There need to be more, and really just in general, I am for vengeful actions by my athletes, potentially dangerous, even better.
Go on.
But in any case, so the baseball season typically is 162 games.
Typically.
It is now 60. And if you get to 60, I think it seems like you will have been lucky to have gotten to 60.
Very.
How does this count in any way?
How could it not count? You're not only competing against the opposition, you're competing against a pandemic. Like, literally, you have to stave it away from your locker room.
I get that it's like some sort of contest and there will be a winner. But the winner of the 2020 World Series will have so little in common with the winner of every other World Series ever.
What do you think why do you think the NBA is any different? Because of the bubble?
Just in terms of, is it a legitimate season or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. The NBA will, first of all, it seems like they've more or less got this coronavirus thing figured out in the NBA, which, Adam Silver for president. Um, but
You don't want that.
no, you're absolutely right. I don't want that. Um, maybe Adam Silver can have Dr. Fauci's job.
Kind
Um,
of looks like them.
yeah, bald white men. They all they're the same.
They're all the rage.
Yeah, people love bald white men right now.
Jeff
Um,
Bezos, people love him.
yeah,
Such a
it's great.
likable guy.
We're probably that's why I cut my hair. Um, but the NBA, like the big difference, other than location of the games, they will have played like 7 less games than usual, but it's not that big a deal. The playoffs will look the same. Like in Major League Baseball, they're not even close to half the games. And so much about baseball, as I understand it, and correct me please, is about like rhythm, and you're doing it every day. And if you're a pitcher, you're out on the mound. If you're a starting pitcher, you're out on the mound every fourth or fifth day. There's some semblance of rhythm and order and ritual to it, and it seems like that's just completely out the window. This is
Yeah,
like some other sport happening here.
I mean, it's certainly the same sport. I mean, and you're right. I mean, the volume isn't the same, which I don't. In some ways, makes it tougher because you kind of have the law of averages to fall back on in 162 games, whereas 60, it's like you can have more statistical anomalies. I mean, I don't. I think
Right.
it's a good question, like just in terms of sports during this pandemic. Like, I mean, as we've sort of
Is
talked
it
about throughout this entire process, like whoever wins in any sport, I think there will be like there will be an asterisk, especially
is it
depending on who
fair
wins.
is it fair of me to say that your opinion on the legitimacy of this baseball season will rise and fall with the win percentage of the Chicago White Sox?
That's probably pretty fair. If the Sox start to fade a little bit, then yeah,
Then this season is a
it's
sham.
a sham. It shouldn't have been played. But I mean, I don't like. You're right. There is like first of all, basketball played the majority of their season, right? So
Right.
baseball had played 0% of their season prior to the pandemic, and then you have a drastic reduction in the amount of games. But I also think just the element of like managing your locker room, trying to keep guys away from going and when you're on the road, going places and and I just think that dynamic is so interesting that it's like you're not just competing against other teams, you're competing against like a pandemic, a virus infiltrating your locker room, which would derail your season. And I mean, it's going to be crazy to see how many teams finish playing 60 games. I mean, it seems impossible because even if you don't get like the virus in your locker room, you're probably going to have teams in your schedule that at some point go through that, and so those games will be canceled. Like it's going to be. I wonder if any teams will play 60 games.
So it seems to me that they're just making this up as they go along. Do I not get it, or were there rules ahead of time, or how does that? Or
I
is it just like
I think
whatever Rob Manfred
they're
decides?
kind of making up as they go along. Like they're like, hey, so what are we supposed to do with the Marlins now? Because their whole team has it, and they got to
Well,
play every day.
now the Phillies and the Cardinals have some
Right.
cases.
So they're
So just let's blow it off. Don't worry about it. We'll not
no,
make it up ever.
they're doing double headers and they're playing 7 inning double headers. So if you liked shortened seasons, may I interest you in some shortened baseball games? How about 7 innings instead of 9? Wouldn't that be
Oh, and
nice?
they also have the runner on second during extra innings too.
Seriously?
Yeah, how do I know this and not you?
I don't know.
The beginning of the 10th inning, the first batter comes up and there's a runner at second base.
Like a imaginary runner or like an actual runner?
No, like an actual runner. So like a base hit ends the game essentially.
Wow. Um,
It's not the same sport.
the big question that's being asked is, and I don't mean like that, like in a literal sense, but certainly I've seen like a lot of people asking this, and that is, like, are they going to cancel the season? And I just don't think that there's any way they will. Like
Well,
they're going to play this. They're going to finish this, whether it's like a bunch of minor leaguers that didn't get COVID if they have to. Like that's how this thing's
do
going to end.
you do you remember who Dick Ebersol was?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So one of my favorite stories Tony
He's
Kornheiser
one of the
tells.
great. I mean, he's a legendary television producer for NBC.
Yeah, he was the head of NBC Sports for years. Basically, his biggest accomplishment, I think, is greenlighting the John Tesh basketball song. Um,
Easily.
but he did some other things too. Um, but Tony Kornheiser tells a story where he was talking to Dick Ebersol one day, and Ebersol told him, "Let me give you kind of the golden rule for every question you will ask." He's like, "Okay, well, what is that?" He goes, "The answer to all of your questions is money. Next." And that's it. And that really is like, that guides a lot of how I view sports now. Like, why are they doing such and such? Okay, well, what's the financial implications of that? They will trot out the San Antonio Little League team to keep this train going if they have to.
They will.
There's not a chance that they pass up on playoff money. No chance. I have a question. As long as we're doing a show with hard right turns, I have a question for you on a completely different subject.
Okay.
And the subject is fantasy football. So aside from, like, number one,
you should not play fantasy football this year.
well, you shouldn't play fantasy football ever, but I do. So of all the things, I have two questions. First question, of all the things that Americans have missed out on, I think that if Americans don't get to play fantasy football this year, there will be a march on Washington unlike anything we've ever seen in our lives, which will only make the problem worse, but whatever. So that's going to be a problem.
Was there a question?
That's not really a question. Somebody, yeah. I'm going to tell you that I have a question. Really, I just want to talk at you. Here's the actual
Sir,
question.
do you have a question?
Here's the actual question. There is a keeper league.
Oh my God, this is a specific fantasy football question. This is like,
it's a specific fantasy football question.
Should I start? Nobody cares about your roster.
No, it's not that.
Okay.
Someone has approached me about taking over a dynasty league. There's an owner that dropped out, and they wanted me to take over ownership of this team. And the most obvious keeper on the team is Damian Williams, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, who has opted out of the season because of coronavirus. There should be some sort of reward for me in this situation, right? Or like, if there's
just pick another keeper.
Well, but
how
my
bad
point
is this guy's roster?
Oh, it's real bad. There's a reason he's not keeping the team. Like, what's the New York Mets guy who just took off?
Cespedes?
Yeah, Cespedes. Like, there's gonna be like a week one, and he's out. Sort of like, wait, what do you mean? We have to touch other players, and then I'm out of here.
The
Meanwhile,
thing is, though,
like,
you shouldn't have kept Damian Williams
have
anyways, because you can just the Chiefs just find running backs in the street, and they're like, "Do you want to rush for 2,000 yards? Would you like
to?" Okay. And last year it was Damian Williams.
So go find the new guy this year. Just go pick up every roster on the Kansas City Chiefs. Pick up every running back of the Kansas City Chiefs. You're about who else on this roster? You've got to find another keeper. You got to find another.
Well, I don't have the roster in front of me, but it was
good because I didn't really actually want to hear this whole roster.
Yeah, like, I'm not going through the roster of
there shouldn't be any
team that's not even mine.
There shouldn't be any restitution for that. What do you want? Multiple draft picks as compensation?
Yes.
For being bad at this and having a keeper that you shouldn't even keep?
Well, first of all, I'm not bad at this. This is not my team yet. Well, let me amend that. I am bad at this, but that's not the reason.
Not this team in particular. I'm not the
this
reason.
Team is not. Yeah. I've proven over a long period of time that I am very, very bad at this, just not here. I don't know. It's like, okay. I've got this guy in my starting lineup, but his wife got pregnant, so now he's dropping out of the season.
What professional athletes do you think have the biggest egos?
Oh, God.
Like sports. What sport athletes have the biggest egos?
100% basketball, no question.
Who's second?
Also basketball.
I mean, do you think football's in that category?
See, I would normally say football until the most recent baseball labor negotiations about getting the season to happen. Now I just think they're all prima donnas. But in terms of ego, first is LeBron James. Second is all the rest of the NBA. And then third, NFL wide receivers. I'll go there.
The reason I ask is because, like, ego drives somebody, I would imagine, to, like, hey, your team needs you to not go out and throw a party. Your team needs you to not be at a bar, not be out in public. Your team needs you throughout the season to basically make choices that are going to make your life shittier, but that you're going to do because it's for the betterment of the team and the organization. So I think ego would drive you to make selfish decisions, right? Ego would say, well, I'm a professional athlete. I'm a millionaire. It doesn't matter if I get COVID because I'm invincible. Basketball, I agree, biggest egos, but they're in a bubble. So.
Well, there's still time for Magic City Wings.
True. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, does football have any chance? Does football have any chance here to be successful?
I'm not sure if you've ever watched a football game before, but every single play, they literally run into each other. And
so you think the issues aren't going outside? It's just the issues of the game itself.
I think if you're not going to be in a bubble, and the NFL is just way too many people involved to actually really logistically have a bubble.
Right. Plus, it's far too expensive, and the NFL obviously doesn't have the money to do that.
They're
basically poor.
Roger Goodell's going to be hosting a telethon in a few weeks. If you're not going to do that, I think what we've seen out in the world is you can be very careful and still catch this thing.
Yeah. Right.
There's
luck.
So
there's luck involved.
Yeah.
For sure.
And the way football is played, really, as opposed to baseball, because I don't think baseball is nearly as much like this. Football is a contact sport. Other people's sweat is getting on you. Other people, like, you're literally not going to spit out of somebody, and that person's spit goes on you.
It's like sex. There's a lot of bodily fluids involved.
I
mean, I love that you're justifying this with a legitimate response. I mean, I obviously understand it's not exactly like sex, but there's a lot of bodily fluids.
Well, I wasn't going to give it a legitimate response. It was really more of a, do I want to make this joke or not? So I'm going to pass.
Good pass.
Thank you. In the interest of both of our marriages.
It's too bad you didn't pass the March on Washington joke, but all good.
Well, it wasn't specifically about that march. It was about all marches. The March on Washington was a march, but there have been other marches.
Yes.
The march, the fantasy football march on Washington, I will not back down from this position. It will be if we cannot play fantasy football, there will be a larger march on Washington than is ever seen before for any social issue in the history of this country. Our children will study it in the history books. 2020, the year of no fantasy football. Also, there was a virus.
I feel like football has had more time to prepare. I feel like they're less prepared than anybody else. I feel like they have no concept of reality, like just no concept of reality. And like they're just going to be hit so hard in the head by reality at some point, and probably some point soon.
Well, I think if you're football, you can reasonably think this thing changes so fast. I mean, when's football's first regular season day? When's that supposed to kick off?
Second. It's like September 12th or something. That Thursday is, that.
God, it's
Thursday.
That soon?
Yeah, I mean, and that's not. I mean, that's the.
So it's basically
schedule.
A month.
Yes,
basically
and they haven't even put. By the way, they haven't even put pads on yet, and it won't until like for another 2 weeks. And then 2 weeks after that, they're gonna play in an NFL game.
Yeah, that might be a problem.
First games are the 13th. The kickoff game is September 10th. They're not putting pads on until August 17th. What? Oof. Like,
I can't decide if that means that every game is going to have like 500 points or no points.
Right, or no point.
But it's
right.
definitely
it's
definitely not going to be
normal.
It's definitely not going to be normal.
Right, because the first 4 weeks of the season are basically going to be preseason games. Like they're going to count, but they're going to be preseason
Wait,
games.
I was reading this thing about how like Amari Cooper is trying to build chemistry with Dak Prescott, and my takeaway was, oh, well, good for Amari Cooper. When in reality, it's like, well, yeah, the games are in a month. Probably ought to get on that.
Right. Like, well, and I mean, with Amari Cooper, he's been there. CeeDee Lamb just got here. So it's like you might start building that rapport. And they're like, part of that article was like, they've been working out together for months. It's like, oh, okay, great. Like, that's not the same thing.
Does Dallas have any Magic City locations?
This has been Steak, Bourbon, and Sports, the show in which we talk sometimes about steak, bourbon, but always about sports. Well, not always. Sometimes we just talk about steak. Sometimes we just talk about
We'll
bourbon.
talk about some of those things in a series of If you listen to enough of it, you'll catch all three.
You'll catch all three at some point. That is Jeremy Mandel. Make sure to follow him on Twitter at Jeremy Mandel. I'm Ari Temkin on Twitter at Ari Sports. Steak, Bourbon, and Sports streams live every Tuesday evening at 9 o'clock Central on YouTube. Of course, the episodes, podcasts drop Wednesday morning. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to our podcast channel wherever you download podcasts, and follow us on each and every social media platform that possibly exists: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Grindr. I think we're on too.
No, you're on Grinder.
We're not on
We are.
TikTok because I'm anti-China. Not anti-China, but I'm not giving my information and video to China in TikTok.
But you are on Grinder.
Yes.
That's a different kind of information sharing.
China can never know that though, and never will. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you to everybody listening and watching. And for now, Jeremy, leave the people with something.
I will catch you at Magic City, and in the meantime, fare thee well.